Hello, good morning and welcome to Park City, Utah, the home of the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. It is the second race weekend of the 22-23 BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup. The final day of action here after a 5-year absence, and we start with women's bobsleigh. As the post-Olympic season starts to build, 9 sleds, one up from last weekend. I'm delighted to be joined by Trinidad and Tobago's Axel Brown. Axel, you were on this track yesterday. Tell us what we need to know.
Morning, Martin. Yeah, so these are the key corners to this track. This slow, long start into corner 4, coming out of 3 here, trying not to skid like I did yesterday and slam the brakes on. Getting a nice exit here. These top 6 corners are what lay the groundwork for the rest of the track. This speed out of 6 here into this kind of labyrinth of 4 corners up to 11 is where we'll see the race won and lost, really. You're not gaining any more speed after this, you can only lose it. So having that key speed through here, round out of 12 into 13, this is probably the trickiest corner on the track. It's the only place it can go drastically wrong. Getting a nice smooth exit into this long straightaway, so you're not taking any taps in the uphill section of what John Morgan would call the graveyard, and then getting the brakes on nice and early, because this is going to be a fast exit, so the brakemen have to be on it to get you stopped in time. Yeah, they definitely do. It's a pretty decent speed. You're doing 80 plus miles an hour from corner 6 on down. Kim Kalicki, our World Cup points leader, the winner of the season opener in Whistler last week, ahead of Melanie Hassler and Kaylee Humphries. Kaylee with plenty of experience on this track. In fact, she is the only woman in the field who was driving here in our last World Cup, which was back in 2017. Problems with the cooling system and then the COVID thing means that we haven't been back since. But Kaylee has 2 wins, 2 silver medals as a driver on this, in fact 3 wins and 3 silver medals as a driver on this track. Cynthia Appiah, one of 3 other athletes who are driving this weekend, who were here in 2017 as brake women. Lisa Buckwitz was one of those, and Kaylee, of course, was the driver here. She had her last World Cup race with a silver medal behind the then winner, Jamie Grubel-Poser. Good morning, Jamie, if you're watching, with Lauren Gibbs. So, Axel, yesterday, the track very fast indeed. We got very close to the track record, which was set by Christoph Langen and Marcus Zimmermann in the Olympic Games. And it's a 20-year-old record, which sort of makes you think, okay, bobsled hasn't progressed since then, but bobsled has progressed since then. I mean, it's got a lot faster. Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, that you've seen huge improvements in the technology of the sleds, and you would assume improvements in the push athletes and the driving and the technology with filming corners and moving on that way. So it's interesting that these track records from 20 years ago are still holding up. Yeah. You know, we've got a chance to see them broken here, and indeed in the 4-man as well. Obviously, the record got broken in the monobob yesterday, but that's because monobob's only just started. Well, they destroyed the skeleton records as well on Thursday's races. So, yeah, it might happen here. Cynthia Appiah of Canada gets race 2 of the BMW IBSF women's bobsleigh competition underway. Behind her is Leah Walkenden in her 2nd start. She made her World Cup debut last week, and they finished in 6th place in Whistler. She got a bronze yesterday in the monobob, so let's see what Cynthia's got. So slightly into 3 there, so you can see that's caused her to be late here, round 4, so she's catching a slight rate, but gets it under control nicely. So the little skids at the back of the sled, we saw a lot of that in the monobob, but even with the brake woman in the back. So that speed out of 6 is the speed that we want to watch. You can see a slight correction there, but that's because she's going late into 11, which causes that wave. Got it under control nicely in 12 here, nice height, early height on 13. The track was quick in training, but it was much quicker yesterday. I think it's much quicker today as well. Yeah, well, you could feel it driving, just the way the sled kind of rattles coming through those first 2 corners. You can feel how hard the ice is and the vibrations coming through the sled, and that's when you know it's going to be fast. Yeah, you can hear when the Finnish cameraman big skid on the brakes. You can hear the crackle of the ice. I mean, it's a very, very cold ice sheet. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and they've done a great job getting the ice prepped all through the North America's Cup as well. It's been fast, it's been really nice ice, so they're doing a great job with that, which you love to see. Yeah, next week here they've got a week to re-prep the track before the Luge World Cup arrives. Late. Yeah, and that's caused that height in 7, which then gives you troubles all the way through that labyrinth. You're kind of chasing your tail. We had the same problem yesterday, and it's just it's a great way to scrub speed. Unfortunately, you can see her try and make that little correction there to not hit the wall, but the writing's on the wall, so to speak.
Yeah. So Cynthia Appiah, the first sled down, 49.36. The track record is a 48.73 set by Shauna Roebuck and Val Fleming. Val Fleming, our race director this weekend, and of course they were the Olympic silver medalists in the women's bobsleigh back in 2002. Kurt Tomasevich there on the left-hand side, watching from the top. He works for the IBSF here this weekend in an administrative role. Running around like an idiot, he said, predominantly is his job. Next up, Melanie Hassler from Switzerland, finished in the silver medal position in Whistler. This is her 16th World Cup start. Nadia Pasternak, her brave woman, celebrating her quarter century of World Cup starts.
So what we want to see here is a nice line going from sliders left to right to be late onto 2, and that allows you to stay smooth there. So she's looking nice here. Yeah, nicely exit into 4.
When you get onto the ice when you're racing, and it's always going to be different from when you were training, because it always is, how quickly do you feel that difference?
Well, the first time in this track that really you're able to feel anything is through corner 4. That's when you can kind of get a feel for the grip of the track, because before then it's those corners don't have any pressure, so you can't really feel the sled. So those big first corner 4 and corner 6 are kind of when you get a feel for it. And then by the time you're down, big skid, which is unfortunate. Any taps and mistakes going uphill are going to cost you in speed, but she's comfortably in the lead now.
Yeah, so nice first run from Melanie Hassler. That late exit from 14 put her into a big skid. Top speed at the bottom, 83.5 miles an hour. So still motoring nicely.
Of course, she was in the lead after the first run in Whistler, so you know that she can be fast on that first run. So it'll be interesting to see what the other sliders are able to do here.
Yeah, actually started her career as a brake woman briefly before being put in the front seat. This is the Wasatch fault from 10 to 11. Just sled goes really light there, doesn't it? So any mistake just gets amplified.
Yeah, and it's a deceptively long straight that into 11. It's not that clear on the camera, but that's quite a long way. It's about 30 meters, and so any slight movement as you come out of 10 is amplified, and then that can really mess up your corner into 11. And as I mentioned earlier, you can't find any more speed. You can only scrub it out, and that's a prime place to do it.
Yeah, trying not to lose speed is the key. Second World Cup start for the USA's Riley Compton. Crashed out in Whistler. So the Marine Corps logistics specialist, 3 years driving. And a debut for Justina Matson behind her from Hood River, Oregon. A heptathlete who has competed in exactly 1 bobsled race before this. Welcome to life at the deep end.
I think this is a great opportunity for both of them, as you said. They had troubles in the 2-woman in Whistler. I think this will be a much better representation of them as a 2-woman team. It's a track that they know better. You know, Riley's been racing here on the North America's Cup the last couple of years, so it'll be interesting to see what they're able to put down in one of these fast BMW sleds.
Yeah, last week she was in one of the older Bodines. Oh! Hit.
Yeah, and as we keep saying, you see that third fastest speed into the labyrinth, you're going to struggle to find any more speed. Big skid there.
Well, the corners are coming at her faster than she's anticipating still.
Yeah, and as a new pilot coming up to the World Cup, this will be a completely different track to what she's seen in the North America's Cup, not only because the ice is faster, but with the blinds being open and the pressure that's on, it's almost like you're driving a whole different track. That's certainly what I felt yesterday at my debut.
And there's, you know, the headshots, the lights, the cameras, and all the other stuff going on during the week as well. It takes a little while. And also, last week driving the Bodine, this week driving the BMW, it feels different, it steers different, it reacts different from what she's used to. So she's in newer, quote, faster kit, let's say, but you have to have that comfort. You have to instinctively know what the sled's going to do.
Yeah, you want it to be an extension of your body, really. And these, you know, the BMW sleds, they're way smaller than those Bodines, which can feel heavy and kind of cumbersome to drive compared to the modern sleds. So, yeah, it's a lot to adjust to, and especially going from a monobob into a 2-woman as well. The monobobs can feel skittish and kind of loose on the back end, and so it's a skill that pilots need to learn is these switching between sleds, and it's much trickier than you might think.
And you can almost see just steering too early, too hard or whatever. The sled reacting faster than she's anticipating. That's why she's driving it down into those short walls.
Exactly.
So Riley Compton down, third of our sleds. 9th World Cup start for her teammate Nicole Vogt. She raced in the World Cup here in January 2016 to 8th place. World Cup best result last week, a 7th placed finish in Whistler. Behind her, Emily Renner, who made her World Cup debut last week with Kaylee Humphries.
She probably has the most runs down this track in recent history since we were last here on the World Cup, because she's had a lot of success on the North America's Cup over the last few years on this track. So she definitely knows how to drive it. She's slightly early onto 3 there, which causes that skid into 4, which just scrubs speed off. It's like putting the brakes on.
Technically speaking, you're only allowed to put the brakes on after the finish line, but yes, it takes the speed out, like going sideways on skis does.
She's still got third fastest speed, and then fastest speed there coming out of the labyrinth, so she's going to go ahead of her teammate for USA, but whether she'll be able to catch Melanie is going to be a mean feat in this bottom half of the track after that entrance into 4.
Yeah, big high wave in 14, little wriggle through the depression at the bottom.
You can see her experience as a pilot there. She saw that her sled was drifting through the straight, was able to just slightly correct that steer to stay off the wall.
So 49.59, third fastest run so far. She was bringing the gap down to about 4/10, but then that mistake in 14 just opened it up again. She is ahead of Riley Compton, so Nicole Vogt and Emily Renner. Renner from Rochester, New York.
We're clearly quite pleased, which is a good thing. Yeah, you can see that tail skid, and you can get it going either way. That corner 3, it depends how you come into it, and because there's no pressure there, it's very hard to correct any mistakes, and that's all built up from corner 1. And if you're not perfect through those 3, you're not going to have the right entrance into 4, and then you're almost doomed for the rest of the track. It's a tricky thing. You almost want there to be a lay-by on the exit of corner 4, and just so you can pull over and say, you know what, it's not my day.
Yeah. Francesco Friedrich's an advocate of that as well, particularly at Sigulda. He said, by corner 3, you know I want to get off now, or you don't. So,
yeah. Corner 0 at Winterberg is another prime one. If you tap out of that, it's game over.
So next up, Kim Kalicki for Germany with Leonie Fiebig. Leonie from Cologne making her first World Cup starts since Winterberg in January of this season, her 16th World Cup race. And Kim, her 18th start. In the previous 17 races, Kim Kalicki has had 15 medals, 1 4th place, 1 6th place. She does know what a podium looks like. 4 World Cup wins in her career for Kim Kalicki. She's never raced here in her life, never had in Whistler either, didn't stop her winning.
Very fast start here. Got to kind of see that the fast starters are coming up, so we'll see what those times look like. But obviously, green here through course 6.
Shout out to last
speed. Yep, fastest speed. So she should be growing this lead without any mistakes further down. She'll be stretching that lead out and setting the precedent for the rest of the field.
Look, she's had 6 trips down this track in the monobob and the 2-man combined, and yet she's making it look like Winterberg.
Yeah, when you combine a nice drive with that kind of start and the equipment we know the Germans have, it's incredibly hard to stop.
Wow, look at that, 48.60. Here we go. Okay, so Shona Roebuck, Val Fleming, that track record has gone. And that is 1300s inside the old record, and that's her 7th trip down the track, I think her 4th in a 2-man sled.
That answers our question from the top of the show about the speed of this track and whether the records are going to fall in, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of does. Be interesting to see what happens in the 4-man later on today, but Kim Kalicki and Leonie Fiebig, 5:24, fastest start of the competition so far.
And ultimately, it's no great mystery, right? A fast start, a clean drive, and fast equipment. That's what leads to records in this sport.
Yeah. And look at this, 10 to 11, straight down the middle of the tubes. No. She just knows how to feel the ice, doesn't she? Incredible. She's only been in the World Cup for 3 seasons, and still. So Kim Kalicki through Melanie Hassler, Cynthia Appiah, 5 down here in the women's bobsleigh in Park City. Haven on to Trinidad and Tobago's Axel Brown, watching the first heat of the Women's Bobsleigh World Cup in Park City, Utah. The race being led by new track record holder Kim Kalicki, her teammate Lara Nolte, with debutante brakewoman Lena Neunecker behind her. Lena with 3 Europa Cup races and 3 medals with Lisa Buckwitz. This is her first World Cup start and a 5:35 getaway.
And only the fourth fastest speed on that start, which, you know, that's everything at this track. She's still clean on the drive, which you know, will help her improve further down in these first few corners. Let's see the speed coming out of here.
Nolte, the Olympic bobsleigh champion, knows how to drive. Look, faster speed, better speed than her teammate Kim Kalicki, so the gap should come down, but a tap there isn't going to help.
It shouldn't be too costly, but you know, you can't afford any mistakes when you're aiming at track records to take the lead. The gap is coming down though.
Yeah. So, late flop off 14, straight through 15 though. Best speed of all, down to single digits. It is. It's inside the old track record, but it's not quite enough to beat Kim Kalicki, 48.60 to 48.68. And that's impressive because they started 1100 slower and came down only 800s back. You should be 3300s back by bobsleigh maths.
Yeah, absolutely, and made that mistake 10 into 11, tapping the wall on the right-hand side. So if she can clean that up in the second heat, you know, we're in for a great race.
Well, we saw in yesterday's World Cup in the two-man, Francesco Frugic of Germany coming from 1500s back to win by 3100. So you can improve by a lot if you tidy up your act in the second run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this track is such a feel track. You know, it's about getting on the rhythm of the labyrinth and all of that. And those little skids are just, you know, it's no great secret. That's what costs the speed at the bottom.
And again, none of the German drivers have ever been in the front seat on this track. Only Lisa Buckwitz has raced here before. Bianca Ribi knows it better, though. Her second World Cup start, she was in 5th place in the two-man last week, having won the monobob season opener. What a way to arrive in the World Cup. She raced here in mono and in 2-seater sleds in North America's Cup, so she's got knowledge of the place. And her brakewoman in her second World Cup start, Niamh Hockey, a hockey player, and this is Niamh's 7th ever official bobsled race, apart from team tryouts. So again, it takes a little while for breakers to learn the technique of getting off the line, getting that sled moving, breaking that inertia.
Yeah, and on this track it's an interesting one with the load, because though it's a steep start, it's easy to run it out of the grooves on this track.
Yeah.
We've seen it in training, we even saw it briefly in the two-man race yesterday. But it's easy to load too late and get a skid into one, which, as we keep saying, you know, it warrants saying, because it's so important here, that if you have any mistakes in those first 4 to 6 corners, it can really ruin the rest of your race. And ultimately, a young brakeman that you know gets too excited on race day doesn't necessarily know that it's a problem that can happen. They don't feel the back end of the sled wiggling around in the first few corners, but it can cause problems.
Good looking run from Bianca Ribi, 3rd best speed. Is this going to see her in the top 3? Maybe 4th place at the line, 3rd place at the line off the 5th best start. Wow, that's a good drive. That was looking neat and tidy, and that's the result.
Yeah, it's a great result, and she's been driving really well. Obviously, last week we saw the advantage that a home track can have with her, you know, depth of experience on that track. She was able to have an outstanding result in Whistler. But I think what's interesting with this race, especially, there isn't really a home advantage for any of these pilots. Kaylee's the only one that has driven it in the World Cup, but then of course she was a Canadian pilot back then. So though she's with USA now, there isn't really that home track kind of hero. So it opens the field up kind of for anyone that is driving it well, as we've seen with the Germans, to have some success.
Yeah, well, when we've seen the German women go 1-2 so far, having never been here before, you know how good they are. So Bianca Ribi in 3rd place, ahead of Melanie Hassler, Cynthia Appiah. And everybody puffing and blowing here. 2,000 meters above sea level, the highest track on the planet, and boy, it takes it out of you.
Oh, it does, and you know, you're selling out on the start line to go as fast as you can, and it's not like you're catching your breath in the rest of the run. So the first chance you get to breathe is when those brakes hit on.
Yeah, 5 minutes after the race, Kaylee Humphries was still catching her breath, and she's not exactly unfit. Kaylee Humphries then with Jasmine Jones, She made her World Cup debut last week with Nicole Vogt, Jasmine from Greensburg, Pennsylvania, her mum told her to say. Kaylee Humphries, 28 career women's bobsleigh races, including gold here in 2012 and 2016, plus 3 silver medals in her career on this track alone. 5.30, that gives her everything she needs.
Yeah, it's obviously not the fastest start, but like we've seen, that's not necessarily the end of the world. We know she can drive it incredibly well, so let's see if she can close that gap down. It's certainly surmountable.
Her absolute trump card is experience and knowledge of these tracks, what they do when they're cold, when they warm, when they cool. Second best speed.
Yes, second best speed, slight correction there, and that's her experience showing, you know, the little check of the runner tips to try and keep it straight.
Still second on the splits, 1500ths of a second back. So she's chasing Kim Kalicki, slightly late off 14. Good speed at the bottom from the BTC sled, 1700ths back. She's in third place in the medal positions again, Kaylee Humphries.
And definitely within touching distance for that second run. Again, there's things to tidy up. I think, you know, if you're within a couple of tenths here, you can certainly make that up in the second run. I mean, we saw yesterday with Friedrich bridging that huge gap. It's to a good driver, they can come back in the second run and make those corrections, and, you know, it's everything to play for.
Yeah, Kaylee has the knowledge, and she will react immediately to this run. She'll know what she needs to do differently in the second heat. That's already going through her mind, even as they're manhandling the sled off the ice.
Yeah, definitely. You get a feel for what the ice is doing, what the weather is, and just how your sled's going to react. You can see that slight correction there to keep the sled as straight as possible and stay off the walls.
Yeah. Come back, baby. A bit so-so for the first heat for Kaylee Humphries.
You know, her experience, it's like having a coach with you in the sled, because she knows the lines probably better than anybody watching.
What was the one word she said? 10.
Yeah.
Okay, World Cup debut for Lisa Buckwitz. What? No, she didn't drive in Whistler, and Nayla Scooten behind her, 22-year-old brakewoman from Gladbach, former hurdler and heptathlete, making her debut as well. Lisa celebrated her birthday yesterday with a silver medal in the monobob, and her brakewoman in her 4th ever bobsled race.
Lisa Buckwitz, pilot.
Yeah, another really fast start here, so if she can keep this drive tidy, she's going to be well within that top 3, and we could have a race on our hands with those top 4.
Lisa was here in 2017, braking for Stephanie Schneider.
Yeah, and that's especially impressive. You know, she was a brakewoman in the Olympics,
yes,
whilst also vying for her own qualification as a pilot. So, you know, she's doing something right in the world of bobsleigh.
She really is.
Just slightly early on there, which means she's got some work to do yet, coming into 11.
Still in second place on the splits. She's behind Kim Kalicki, but ahead now behind the Olympic champion Lauren Alter. Will she be ahead of Kaylee Humphries? Look at that exit. This is her first season driving at the top level, and she's in 4th place, 48.85. That is a great opening drive. Her World Cup debut as a driver for Lisa Buckwitz in women's bobsled. She is 4th with only 3 Olympic gold medals in front of her, and last week's winner Kim Kalicki. I mean, you know, talk about, you're punching at the highest levels here, aren't you?
Yeah, and so to be again within touching distance of a medal here in her debut is very impressive. As you know, we saw on the clocks coming down, it's a tale of speed at this track. You know, the 4th fastest speed is finishing the 4th fastest on the overall clocks. The only clean run was Kalicki. Everybody else has just tiny mistakes, which really don't look like much, but when you're dealing with hundredths of a second, you only get 800ths of a second to second place. You know, those are the difference makers.
Well, she grabbed a silver in the mono yesterday. There's every opportunity that she's going to give herself a late birthday present in the women's bob as well. But our first heat leader is her teammate Kim Kalicki. Kalicki with 4 career gold medals, halfway to adding a 5th. Melanie Hassler, first race since January 2022. A good start and a new track record to go with it. So the next target, of course, will be the start record. They're 1400ths away from that. That's a big ask to try and find that in a second getaway. A 5:24 start to the 5:10 of Alana Myers-Taylor and Asia Evans back in 2012. Goodness me. So that record has hung around a while as well. That's a decade-old start, old start record. So Kim Kalicki, Lauren Alter, Kaylee Humphries, then Lisa Buckwitz, Bianca Ribi and Melanie Hassler. That is your field as of now. We will be back to see them compete for the medals again in the second run, and that will be at 11 local, that is 2 Eastern, that is 1800 GMT. Final whistle, full time, Netherlands 3, USA 1. So the front row of the truck is happy. The rest of the crew, guys, next time out, it'll be coming home to the USA. We'll see you at 11 for our second and deciding heat in the women's bobsleigh. Till then, bye for now.
Preparation, it'll be reverse order by breaks, so the final sleds will be leaders.